Welcome to the Future of Solana panel. I'm Ben Sparango. I'm the head of strategy at Solana. Today I'm joined by these guys from the Solana ecosystem, very important key players. To my left is Dylan from Saber. In the middle there is Matt from Multicoin Capital. And on the far end is Cindy from Drift Protocol. So to start today, I wanted to kick it off with talking about the Solana DeFi ecosystem, both of which Dylan and Cindy work in. So to kick it off, Dylan, if you could just explain what you're working on with Saber and tell a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. My name's Dylan. I'm working on Saber Protocol. So Saber is an AMM on Solana that's optimized for stable pairs of assets. Similar to like Curve on Ethereum. Our big focus, though, is in cross-chain assets. So we support a bunch of different like cross-chain stablecoins, other kinds of RAT assets from like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Terra, and we just launched support for Celo just like an hour ago. And yeah, very excited about the Solana ecosystem.
Awesome. Cindy, could you introduce yourself and explain a little bit about Drift?
Hi, I'm Cindy from Drift. We actually recently rebranded from Moe to Drift, so that's why the name's still there. We're building perpetual swaps on Solana. So our goal is to bring on-chain liquidity, SEX liquidity to the on-chain world for derivatives. Our first product is a perpetual swap using a virtual AMM. Following that, a little more exotic products coming up. We just launched on DevNet this week, so super excited to talk more about bringing derivatives onto Solana.
And just for the audience, in case anyone's unfamiliar, can you explain briefly what a perpetual swap is?
Yep. So a perpetual swap is a type of futures contract that was pioneered by BitMEX in, I think, early 2015. Quite native to crypto. It tracks the underlying asset one-to-one fashion. And the way that the perpetual swap is tied to the underlying is using a mechanism called a funding rate that payers who are long or short a contract have to pay if they're above or below the index price. And the interesting thing about perpetual swaps is that they don't expire, unlike normal futures contracts. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. And Matt, would you mind briefly introducing Multicoin Capital and some of the investments that you guys have made into the Solana ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. So hey, everyone, I'm Matt Shapiro. I'm a partner at Multicoin Capital. Multicoin is a thesis-driven investment firm focused exclusively on crypto. Today we manage a hedge fund and a venture fund. We have several billion in AUM, and we invest across both public and private markets in crypto. We've been long-time investors and supporters of Solana, probably going on about 3.5 years now. So obviously very excited about Solana and where the ecosystem is going. And we're very active investors in the Solana ecosystem and some of the fantastic founders and entrepreneurs that are building in the space, and what we're going to continue to do so.
Awesome. And just to highlight one of the investments that you guys have made publicly recently in the Solana ecosystem, one that's pretty unique to Solana that I haven't seen built anywhere else is UXD protocol. Could you explain what UXD is?
Yeah, that's right. So UXD protocol is a deal that we recently led that's being built in the Solana ecosystem. It's a new construct of a decentralized stablecoin. So stablecoins are obviously really big in crypto. A lot of the success has been around centralized ones like USDC and Tether. There's been a handful of attempts at decentralized stablecoins. Most of them are using some form of senior shares model or like a rebasing of some form. There's been a particular construct that we think is really interesting that hasn't really been tried before, mostly I think because the infrastructure wasn't there. And that's what UXD protocol is trying to do. UXD uses effectively the basis trade to capitalize a stablecoin. And so the basis trade is going long spot and short futures. And in doing that, you basically have a hedged position that is obviously stable. And that's what underpins the decentralized stablecoin. And the reason that's interesting on Solana is you need sort of scalability and you need composability across the ecosystem. And so one of the best things about UXD is that it could leverage all of the DeFi derivatives that are being built on Solana. And it can tap into and access liquidity from all of them, like Drift is a great example. Also, the stablecoin that it generates from the ecosystem is totally composable with the rest of Solana and DeFi. So it's not like stuck in a specific type of layer 2. It's not stuck in a shard somewhere. It's totally composable. It'll have trading pairs, and they'll be on decentralized exchanges. You could use it on Saber and swap it for USDC. So there's a lot of composability across the ecosystem, and I think it's really uniquely enabled by Solana, and it's a very different construct that we've been, frankly, thinking about for a long time. So really excited to lead a deal like that in this ecosystem.
Awesome. And something that's just personally so exciting about UXD is that like all the stablecoins that we've seen today are either fiat backed or backed by a volatile asset, which has caused issues in the past, like with Maker and Black Thursday, or just people who are unsure about somebody custodying their assets. So UXD is one of those assets that you can be sure that if it's fully stable, and it can be built entirely with decentralized perpetuals on the back end, so you don't have to worry about custody risk as well. So yeah, just shifting gears a little bit into the culture side of Solana, I wanted to talk about kind of the flagship product on Solana NFTs, which is Metaplex. Dylan, you contributed to that project. Would you be able to tell us what Metaplex is?
Yeah, for sure. So kind of like stepping back a bit, like one of the cool things about working on a sort of like newer L1 like Solana is you get to like see what's happening on Ethereum and other blockchains, and kind of like creating like new protocols that sort of like learn from what's happened elsewhere in the ecosystem. And so Metaplex was basically this like idea to create an NFT protocol that includes a lot of the things that right now are pretty fragmented on other NFT ecosystems. So one is just the standard itself, so like similar to like ERC 721, there's a token standard, like metadata standard for how these things are created. But apart from that, like baked in there is like auctions, like things about selling, royalties for creators. And so yeah, essentially you can think of it as just like the kind of like all-inclusive like NFT protocol on Solana. And yeah, lately we've seen a ton of like NFT projects being built using that Metaplex standard.
Yeah. To date, actually, the Metaplex repo has about 2,000 forks. Something that's super interesting about this NFT platform is that you're not directing your users who are trying to get NFTs to another website. You can white label it to your own domain and just run your NFT auction right there. So awesome. And Matt, from an investor point of view, the creator NFT economy on Solana is really starting to bud. In addition to Metaplex and adjacent to Metaplex, what are you guys excited about there?
Yeah, so NFTs are obviously a very exciting space. One of the things I love about it is I just think just general inclusivity. Anyone, any creator anywhere now has sort of global rails to sell and market their work. And the buyer universe is extraordinarily large as a result. You're gonna have artists that sell their NFTs for millions of dollars, and that's amazing. I think you're also gonna have artists that sell their NFTs for $20, and I think that's a fantastic outcome as well. The challenge I think with NFTs today is that you don't really have a $20 NFT because usually the gas costs are are 10x or 20x the price of that, and so I think that sort of segments and prices out a big buyer universe for these assets. So I'm pretty excited to see a lot more NFTs start to be issued on Solana and take advantage of the speed, the throughput, and the lower fees. So I think that'll help open up the market. I think it's pretty clear that NFTs are helping crypto cross the chasm. It's bringing in an extraordinary number of net new users to crypto, and these are people that don't care about monetary policy or they don't care about finance. They're in this for collecting or trading or feeling part of a community. Like there's a lot of net new folks that are coming into the space, and I think this is helping fuel the creator economy, which I think has major secular tailwinds behind it. Metaplex is really interesting. I think generally in 12, maybe 24 months, you're going to see every major Web2 social media platform find a way to allow their content creators to issue, mint, and sell NFTs to their respective audience. That feels pretty clear. The path dependency is less clear, but I think Metaplex is super interesting because it enables all of that. It abstracts away the complexity of the blockchain. It actually lets creators do what they're supposed to do and what they're good at, which is creating content and effectively marketing. So I think it's a big enablement layer for something that has major tailwinds behind it.
And staying with that creator economy stuff, I wanted to talk briefly about Audius, which you guys invested in. Could you give the audience an overview of what Audius is and why it's uniquely enabled by Solana?
Yeah, so Audius is a decentralized, effectively music platform where creators can find a better way to engage with their audience. I think when you look at music and audio and recording specifically, I think less than 10% of the dollars generated by those creators end up back in their pockets. There's just a tremendous amount of middlemen along the way. There's agents, there's managers, there's recording labels. And so I think what Audius allows creators to do is actually cut out a lot of the middlemen and really provide content directly to their audience and engage them in new ways. And so it's seen a tremendous up. I mean, there's maybe 6 million, I think, users on Audius, probably one of the most, if not most used, application in crypto today. They're doing a lot with NFTs around Solana, and I think really helping bridge NFTs and creators together around music, around venues. So that's a reason that we're really interested in Audius.
Awesome. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about like the community around Solana and just like generally like the developer ecosystem. So as ecosystem projects, both Dylan and Cindy, what do you think are the strengths of the ecosystem as it is today, and what are you excited that in the future will be built to make it more robust?
Yeah.
Either of you can start. Yeah.
Sure, happy to start. Yeah, I guess going back, so the kind of like inception of Saber actually happened at the first like Solana hackathon. So Solana hackathons, like they basically the Solana like foundation puts on these hackathons to encourage like more builders to look at Solana. And like there's good prizes, good sponsors, and so yeah, that's something that we participated in back end of last year. And yeah, like that was good for getting us kind of like our foot into the ecosystem. And I've like talked to a lot of projects who also like started through the hackathons. We actually didn't decide though to like, go forward with like really like pushing Saber as like a real project until like a few months ago. And a big part of that was that like just because Solana was early, a lot of like the developer ecosystem was kind of lacking. A lot of the developer experience, stuff you're used to, like I was building on Solidity before, like that stuff wasn't built out yet. But like in the past few months, like there's an explosion of just like really, really good developer tooling. Like one specifically I would shout out is like Anchor, which is a framework created by Armani Ferrante, who's a developer at Serum, which is another Solana project. And so yeah, that's been really good. I think just in general, like it's been a lot easier to build projects. I would say like the main things that are missing, one is kind of like data indexing. Like right now, that's something that doesn't like really exist on Solana, and so like there's not like too many like good analytics for projects. That's something I really want to see built. And yeah, other just like kind of like very generic, like we need more auditors who are familiar with Solana smart contracts, but I'm confident all of this stuff will happen in a pretty short amount of time.
Cindy?
Yeah, I think the exciting thing about Solana and building on Solana right now is it feels like a lot of the ecosystem is being built out at the same time. So as we're building a perpetual swap index, or also teams that are doing options that we could tie into spot and stable asset swaps are also being built at the same time. Yeah, I guess that's a part of a very friendly ecosystem where each project is very willing to help each other out. Also, yeah, major shout out to Anchor. I think Anchor has single-handedly brought on more developers into the space who may not be as like Rust native as you need to build in Solana without Anchor. So that's been really interesting, and I think what we're really excited about is also more out-of-the-box tooling for just launching both like an Anchor backend, some SQL backend database, and also like front end out of the box at the same time. I think there's still some friction in getting things set up at this stage that Ethereum sort of like has built around over the past couple of years. And yeah, I would say really bullish on just how smart and friendly everyone in the Solana dev space.
Yeah, Dylan, you touched briefly on joining the first hackathon and that being the inception for Saber. I would love if you could talk like a little bit more about like what that experience was like for you guys in like the super early days where we had that first hackathon where there was like 300 signups and it was very intimate and we knew everybody.
Yeah.
Just talk a little bit more about like what that was like.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, yeah, I think like back then, we were just like looking and playing around a lot of different chains, just like trying to see what's happening in the space. Like probably most people, like we heard about Solana through like SBF and that whole ecosystem. And so joined the hackathon just to like kind of give it a try. And yeah, I mean, I think like one cool thing is that there's like a repo that some of the Solana Foundation people made that has like a ton of like different like reference protocols that we basically were able to like look at that code and like they had one for like an AMM and we were able to adapt that into like a stable swap, like a curve like AMM that is Saber today. And so yeah, I mean, I think definitely like the Solana community is like very, very, I'd say supportive of projects. Like we had a lot of support from people from kind of like all directions, like, engineering questions. If we had like, we needed help on something, like some like developers would come in and help us pretty easily. Yeah, like overall, I think it was like the Solana community was very good. It was just kind of back then the sort of like full developer experience and like, having to like maintain this code just was kind of rough back then. But yeah, like now it's like fixed, so that's why I came back on.
Awesome. And Matt, you're pretty tenured in the space now. You've been investing at Multicoin for 4 years. So I'd love to hear just from your experience going through different waves of projects in the crypto ecosystem that have come and gone. How do you feel about the Solana ecosystem right now and in comparison to some of those previously?
Yeah, there's a real buzz around the development ecosystem of Solana that like we really haven't seen in a lot of other groups. You have a lot of, I think, just intellectual capital in the Solana ecosystem. I think it's less of a copy-paste type of feel than some of, like, and I think some of that has to do with like lack of EVM support, and like we could talk about whether it's a feature or bug, but that's very different than the other chains. And so I think a lot of the people and a lot of the developers, including them, that are in the Solana ecosystem are building because they see Solana as differentiated in the market, and they're building things that are specific for the trade-offs that Solana has chosen around speed and scalability. So that's like been meaningfully different than I think in the past, and something that we're really looking for. Like we are looking for projects that are uniquely enabled by Solana. And that's where we've been spending a lot of our time and investing. And there's just a whole host of applications that I think Solana enables. DeFi is obvious, like DeFi and Solana I think is going to be massive. And even like the small things like yield aggregators or refinancing loans. I mean, you have all these interest rates that are moving all of the time because the speed is so fast and because the fees are so low on Solana. I mean, you could be refinancing or moving capital around, significantly faster than you would in other ecosystems where just the cost to move that capital is so high, and so you aren't able to take advantage of as many opportunities as there are, right? So there's like a lot of, I think, speed-based DeFi applications that are really interesting on Solana that you just can't get anywhere else. Options are another area, like super interesting. Options have a lot of like skew naturally, which makes it really hard to build decentralized versions that are, I guess, collateral efficient. In order to have something collateral efficient as it relates to options, like you just by definition need low latency and fast finality. And that's something that Solana offers that like you're just not going to get anywhere else. Gaming is another one. We haven't, we're just looking at play to earn, right? Like that's just taking off with Axie. If you're gaming today, there's like Star Atlas on Solana, but if you're building a game today, like just the sheer volume of throughput that you need and the actions that you're doing on chain, like you just need volume, you need speed, you need throughput, you need low fees, and like that environment again is like very uniquely enabled by Solana. So I think you're going to see a ton of games. I think you're going to see plenty of developers and entrepreneurs, take the play to earn model and do really interesting things with it. And I think, Solana is just disproportionately going to get a lot of that developer activity.
Awesome. Dylan, if you could talk a little bit about the growth of Saber to this point, and specifically how you are working cross-functionally with other ecosystem projects and what that experience is like to help, one, grow liquidity of Saber, and two, have just like the general success of the Solana DeFi ecosystem.
For sure. Yeah, the growth has been pretty like ridiculous. I think like a lot of, I guess we kind of launched the project in July. And yeah, since then, like it reached a peak of like $4 billion in TVL. I think like last week or something. I think right now it's around 3 billion. But yeah, like a lot of people are like telling us like, oh, like I don't want to build Solana because the liquidity is not there, the capital is not there. I think Saber is like basically proof that like yeah, the capital is there. Like if you just build like products that are good, then people will come, and there's definitely investor interest in Solana. And yeah, I would say like right now, kind of how I think about like Saber growing is that it is a protocol at the end of the day, and so the way for it to actually like be useful is for other products to build on top of it. And so I've been chatting with a lot of different teams about how basically Saber can be this like composable layer, because it's stable pairs like of assets. So if you think about like a USDC, USDT, LP token, it's just like infinitely better than a USDC token itself, as long as you like trust basically the other pair in the or other asset in the pair, because at least it's earning a yield from like the swaps in Saber. And so yeah, I've been like talking to a lot of projects about how we can like basically compose Saber. One example is a project called Parrot. So similar to like a Maker on Ethereum, what they're doing is they have a lot of assets that can be used to basically collateralize stablecoins and other kinds of synthetic assets. And so yeah, like one of the things you can do right now is use a Saber LP token for USDC, USDT, and use as collateral to mint these like Pi tokens, which are effectively kind of like DAI. And so yeah, it's been a good experience. Definitely like I think like TVL and stuff like is not kind of like the whole story. I think like the really big like narrative to me about Solana is just seeing how many developers have come in the past few months and are actively building like pretty high quality projects. And so yeah, like I expect to see a lot of like things launching in the next few months.
Just to pull on that liquidity thread a little bit more, one thing that constantly comes up in conversation is how, like in a multi-chain world, how do you make sure that you have TVL on Solana as compared to like Ethereum, and what do you do with users that have a lot of assets on Ethereum? So can you talk a little bit about integrations with Wormhole and how you see that contributing to the growth of the overall multi-chain world?
Yeah, so in general, like I'm very bullish on a multi-chain future. I don't see Solana as being like a killer to like these other blockchains, and maybe it does turn out that like most of the activity is happening on Solana, but I see a world where like a lot of chains are coexisting, and you'll have like certain communities that gravitate towards one chain for some particular reason. And so yeah, Wormhole, as Ben mentioned, that's a project that basically it's kind of a sort of like a bridge protocol that allows you to like send like any kind of message, like arbitrary messages between different blockchains. And like one kind of message that is the main one that we're like focused on in Saber is asset bridging. And so like right now they support Ethereum, they're going to support for Terra and BSC very soon. But yeah, like I think a lot of with Saber, a lot of the reason why our TVL went up is like it's the only place to deposit these like bridged assets. So people coming from Ethereum, when they bridge USDC over using Wormhole, they're not actually getting like a native version of USDC on Solana that like all the projects are using. They're getting this like Wormhole wrapped Ethereum version of USDC. And so yeah, like what's happening with Saber is you have a lot of people bridging in, and maybe they're depositing their assets there, or maybe they're going from like that Wormhole like Ethereum wrapped asset into whatever native Solana asset that they need to use to do whatever, like trade on Mango markets or something else in Solana.
Awesome. Cindy, could you talk a little bit about how you guys are seeing Drift be composable with the rest of the Solana ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main and like the slowest hanging fruit would really be accepting things like Saber LP tokens as collateral. That's composable. If you assume that it's like one-to-one composable with USDC and USDT, you might want to accept Saber USDT USDC LP token as collateral and count that as cash on our platform. And the other ways are really with protocols like UXD, where they can build a hedged position going long, depositing let's say Solana and shorting that with Sol Perps and building a synthetic stablecoin. So that's like a couple of ways. I think integrating with other derivatives protocols also pretty interesting. For instance, having options along with perpetual swaps would be really powerful. And I would say that's the main reason that options haven't really taken off on any DeFi chain yet. Is because there hasn't really been a way for you to hedge your options with perps and futures on the same platform. So some interesting things that you could do is, reduce the margin necessary for an options position, making it more capital efficient if you had hedged part of it with a perp contract. So I think those are uniquely enabled by Solana because everything's composable on a single chain instead of sort of having to transfer between different layer 2s, layer 1s. So yeah, those are a few ways that we're looking to integrate with the rest of the ecosystem.
Awesome. Coming up here on the close, I want to just run through with everybody one more time and just like talk about something that you guys are most excited that might be on the horizon for Solana, something maybe specifically that wouldn't be apparent to the rest of them who are not in the Solana ecosystem on a weekly basis. Whoever wants to start first.
Sure, I can start. Yeah, touching on what Matt said about gaming, I think that gaming will, I think it's potentially very huge on Solana. I think, I've talked to a lot of like gaming studios that are already building projects that, are very successful in their own right. Looking at Solana due to like a lot of the technical infrastructure, the throughput that it provides, and so I think like the multiverse concept makes a lot of sense on something like Solana, where things can be traded very easily, and that's a space I'm looking at a lot.
Some of the more simple things are probably what's most exciting to me. The obvious one is just like native SPL support from exchanges. Like the fact that I think FTX today is probably the only exchange that allows you to withdraw like USDT or USDC natively onto Solana as a Solana native token. I don't really understand why that's the case. It seems pretty obvious that all of them should be doing this, and I think exchanges have to figure out how they're going to manage, sort of the liabilities that they have. People want to transfer assets back and forth from wallets to exchanges, exchanges to exchanges. Doing it is just costly. And as an exchange, you either have to eat the cost as part of your business model, like that's a decision you're making, or you're passing that on to your consumers. And so people today are spending tons of money to transfer assets just from one to another. And I think every exchange should probably have SPL natively. And I think what most people will find is just the rails of Solana are just faster and cheaper. If you want to move an asset from one place to another, like Solana is the best way to do it. Especially when you have something like Saber. I mean, you could swap, it's probably faster to withdraw from, FTX into, USDC, use Saber to swap it to Tether and like deposit it into Binance. Like, so, something like that is like, should be remarkably fast and cheap and way better than the alternative today. And I think a lot of people just don't realize that because they haven't really onboarded into Solana yet. And I think when the exchanges eventually start doing that, I think that'll be pretty obvious, and I think it'll be a big onboarding moment for net new people into Solana. The other area, which is kind of tangential to that, I guess, is just payments, which I think have a lot of the same trade-offs and considerations. Circle is obviously very early to Solana, and there's USDC support. Visa and Circle are working together on lots of things. If you think the future of the world is going to be commerce-driven, if you think people are going to swipe their credit card and have dollars land in someone's wallet natively in USDC, like what are the trade-offs that you really want there? I mean, the obvious ones are you want it to be as fast as possible, like you want that transaction to complete as fast as possible, and you want it to be at the lowest possible cost because it's just more money into everybody's pocket. The merchant, the consumer, prices change, it can go down. All of that, like Solana seems like the obvious choice for those rails, just given that set of trade-offs. And like I don't think we've really scratched the surface of that yet. And I think as crypto continues to permeate into the mainstream, like that's a pretty interesting use case in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a really interesting area is probably wallet and wallet improvements. I know Phantom's done some really good work on just making it way more friendly for users, but I think there's still a layer of abstraction away to reach people who are not already in crypto. I think there's always some security upgrades that would make Phantom and Solana a much better option to use. For instance, knowing exactly what gets transferred in and out of your wallets during transactions. I know there's been some phishing attacks over the past couple of weeks that manipulated auto approvals on Solana. So I think things like that to massively improve user experience on Solana and also security are a feature I'm really excited about. The other is probably making DeFi more exciting. I know like people are quite jaded with everything that's going on in like metaverse gaming, and we're seeing some really interesting projects pop up that sort of wrap a really like a interactive like gaming UI around DeFi functions. One example is like DeFi Land. It's literally Farmville on Solana that is actually farming on Radium and and Serum. So I think those things that bridge gaming, metaverse, and DeFi together are ultimately going to come out of Solana first, just because the speed of Solana can match the actual experience of these games. So yeah, everyone said really good things here, so it's very bullish.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.